scheduled meeting, but I'll say up front, I'm willing to have one more meeting if it's necessary, but that will be it. So depending on today's results of today, we may have one more meeting or we may not. And finally, two reminders. One, this program is being recorded, and we'll place the link online. And two, if you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marty. Started on these.
There, can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I have kind of a new arrangement on my screen, so I will try to share my screen. So we sent out, I'm looking to find my documents. We sent out some updated statements and some updated plan designs. Eric, does that show the document with the
No, I don't see the document. I don't see it yet, Marty.
Okay. I might not have clicked on it in the right spot. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's giving me that choice. Well, anyways, hopefully everyone got that in the email along with the agenda and the comments. I hear a couple beeps, so I don't want to get into too much of it till a few of those stop. Okay, hopefully we've got everybody. So thank you everyone for the comments that we received, and to the extent that I could, I incorporated suggestions into our cost structure plans and tried to clarify some of the statements, you know, that explain or back up those charts. We did add an HSA silver plan. That was one of the suggestions, particularly to, you know, considering the small group market, that's a popular choice. One of the other items that we wanted to talk about today is the pediatric dental. So I've added a suggested cost share structure at the bottom of the plans to show pediatric dental embedded in the health plans. And my suggestion is that those are for off-exchange plans. When you're on exchange, the pediatric dental is available through standalone coverage. So that's something that we can discuss. I don't know if anyone has any reactions. I know you just got this yesterday. So, you know, we can certainly talk about it during the call, but also we're asking for comments from this latest go round by November 6th, just to let everybody know. So I can go through if everybody doesn't have those. Let me see. I'll bring it up and we can go through the details.
When you fade it out, I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm looking for the pediatric design. It's too bad I can't bring it up.
I can't hear you, Marty.
Maybe if I get closer to the mic. Okay, can you hear me now?
Marty, I can hear you.
Okay, so the pediatric dental, I'll just go through it in case people don't have the chart up. And once again, it doesn't act like it's allowing me to share my screen. I don't know if anyone else is able to share screen. I see Keith. I don't know if there's something I should have. Anyways, okay.
Marty, I can send a link in the chat to the page that has all the documents.
Okay, So, for the pediatric dental embedded in the health plans, our suggestion is a dental deductible of $100. Then for the pediatric preventive and diagnostic, it would be 20% coinsurance after the dental deductible. Then there's a 50% coinsurance for restorative and the orthodontics. Of course, that's the medically necessary orthodontics. Okay, sorry. So that's the suggested dental embedded in the plans. I don't know. I'll pause for a moment if anybody had any comments or input on that.
Hi, Marty. This is Kate from Consumers for Affordable Healthcare. So just to clarify, I think the other document had mentioned that for the exchange plan, that was it dental would be embedded at 1 per level.
Yeah, let me go back to that, Kate. I think you're
on
right.
exchange. And if so, would this also be the cost sharing structure proposed for those?
Yes. Okay. Yep, you're right. On item number 13, and I highlighted it. Yeah, so we wouldn't have to dig through all the rest of them. So it's included on all off exchange plans and at least one on exchange in each metal tier to give people that option. And as I mentioned, there is also the option of purchasing the standalone dental on the typically on the exchange. So I don't know. I don't know if, this is something that is a little bit awkward, I try to say, in the Affordable Care Act. And so we've been kind of trying to work, the best we could while still appreciating that, for some people, the standalone dental works better and for some, the embedded. So we'd like to have certainly the choice available to individuals.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we also thought, some states, I think California, maybe, trying to remember which others, Connecticut, and their pediatric dental benefits in terms of waiving the cost sharing for the preventive cleaning. I think would help kind of remove barriers to that preventive care, or at least lowering it from the, the $100 deductible would be something that we would suggest.
And Kate, are you aware, is it just the cleanings?
So, I mean, looking at California, what they did is, pretty much most of the preventive diagnostic, they've waived the charges.
Okay, so in other words, what I've got is a 20% right now. Yep, I just pulled up. If you look on the California tab, it's got, let's see, oral exam, preventive cleaning, x-ray, sealant, fluoride, and space maintainers at no charge. And then some of the others. So, okay, that's a consideration. We can, I guess, to mention, so everyone understands kind of our time frame at this point. We are hoping to, like I said, we're talking about, today, what we've got for a suggestion with comments for November 6th. And we are hoping to wrap it up with the last meeting. Right now we're thinking about November 20th. We'll finalize that and announce it. So after November 20th, we're really hoping to have everything finished so that we can draft up the rule and have the rule process begin. So just to let everyone know.
Marty, can I jump in with a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Hey, it's Kevin Lewis. Thanks for the work on this. I just have a question in terms of the logic of 13, where it's requiring all off-exchange plans to have pediatric dental and at least one on-exchange. I'm not sure that the distinction really holds, because isn't it still the case that all on-exchange have to be offered off-exchange? And so if we have at least one on-exchange, suggests that some on-exchange wouldn't have the dental, but if you're requiring all off-exchange plans to have it, then wouldn't that mean that all on-exchange have to have it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Kevin. So, and that's where I struggle a little bit. My understanding is that off exchange, there has to be assurance that pediatric dental was offered or available.
Right.
I mean, maybe somebody can, does that?
Right, but it could be provided as standalone. As you pointed out, I mean, some people do prefer that, and it does offer a wider array, a range of, affordability as well. So I just wanted to work through the technical details on that, but that can be taken care of.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And that's what I'm trying to, kind of think through this, but yet meet the, there's certainly federal requirements. There is no state requirement. So we're not able to, mandate pediatric dental because, we certainly don't want to create an additional state mandate that has to be defrayed. And that's not our, that's not the guidance or the, requirement for Clear Choice, to create mandates. So our thought was to create this module that's standardized, and then that, is available to be offered in the plans. So certainly if somebody, has a better way of wording 13, that might be a good way to clarify, how that will work.
I mean, basically, we're just trying to preserve the status quo as to the types of dental coverage that can be offered on and off the exchange. We're continuing to comply with the ACA requirements and following CMS guidance over how to mix and match pediatric dental benefits under existing law, because the law isn't changing there.
So this
Thanks,
is Chris
Bob.
Alsifort. I just want an additional comment on 13. I mean, to build on what Kevin was saying, it's almost meaningless, because bronze is the only on-exchange plan that has more than one option. There's only one silver that can be offered on exchange, and only one gold, and only one catastrophic. So bronze is really the only one where 13 would even apply, really.
And would you could have the accepted plans, though, if you applied for those, conceivably, right? You could, for one of the 3 plans that don't comply with Clear Choice. Is that what it would be referring to in the other levels?
Yeah, I guess I don't have an answer for it unless somebody else wants to clarify that. Okay, well, anyways, that's something, we can work on the language and continue, considering how to work that best into the plans. The other thing that came up that we were looking for some assistance and trying to work through clarifying, and I've highlighted it, is 22. So the behavioral outpatient services. And I've borrowed from Washington, where they had office visits for the treatment of mental health, behavioral health, or substance abuse disorder conditions shall be categorized as behavioral health outpatient services regardless of provider type. Outpatient services may be subclassified into office visit and all other outpatient items and services. And then Washington had the same copay for PCP and behavioral outpatient services. So the question came up whether behavioral services should be specialist. And so, you know, we've looked through our plans. There seems to be a little bit of, you know, disparity or differences. So in an effort to standardize, this is my suggested approach. And, you know, if anyone's got a better way to word it, or, you know, wants to kind of shed light on how that would work. I mean, certainly it's of concern. You know, we do want these services to be available, and recognize that a PCP could provide behavioral health services, but there's also other provider types like LCSW. I don't remember the full list of them, but there's certainly other you know, social worker or therapists that provide those services as well. So I just wanted to give us a chance if anyone has comments or suggestions they want to make now, or they can also provide those in the written comments later.
Hey, Marty, this is Tyler Swerjon at Anthem.
Yeah, hi, Tom.
I had a comment. We were, I mean, we've been testing these plans, and one of the things that we've run into are issues with satisfying mental health parity compliance, federal mental health parity compliance. And I think the plan designs you sent yesterday vary a little bit from what we were testing before. So I can't say where we would land on some of these new designs with the cost share changes that you made to mental health. But do you expect carriers having to certify compliance with that, or is that something the Bureau would take up, given some of the flexibility around that testing and some of the issues I think we're having on that part?
Yeah, once again, that is a really tough area. I mean, there has to be compliance with it. And, you know, I think the carriers have dealt with it for a while, so you're familiar with, you know, making those changes. Once again, you know, to the extent that you find a compliance problem, I would expect, you know, that the Bureau would be consulted, and perhaps we'd have to find a way to make it work. You know, it's kind of a way of hedging the answer and saying, I don't know that, you know, that we're all that certain. I guess I'm looking for, can you give some detail about what particular aspect of it would not be in compliance?
So I think when we tested, almost everyone was out of compliance. But what I think what we learned is that if we would by setting the behavioral health visit equal to the PCP copay, that may bring a lot of the plans into compliance. Again, we'll have to test that because we haven't got to that part yet. That may satisfy most of the plans, but there was one, I believe, the Bronze High plan needed more than just that change. I think there's maybe deductible applying before a certain visit or something like that. I'd have to go back and look, but that was one that was a little bit different, required a little bit more changes than the rest.
Okay, well, we're, yeah, certainly willing to work on that, and it does need to be in compliance. I mean, it's federal, so it preempts any type of state, structure that we would set up. So our intent is certainly to have those plans in compliance. So any suggestions on that would be appreciated.
Okay, yeah, we can write something up and send it over to you.
Okay, and just in talking about next steps, to make sure I get it out there, our thought is, firming up these plans, getting the cost structure finalized. Certainly, we don't have the AV calculator yet for 2022, so there could be some adjustments that would be needed. But if carriers, I'm hoping, can give us some input in this next round, maybe some more specifics about pricing. It is a concern of ours. We certainly don't want to create plans that are not, reasonably priced for consumers. There are, there's the capability within the alternate plans to create, some lower price perhaps, or what the carriers would want to offer. So I guess I'm asking for some feedback. We're not going to price these plans. That's not in our capability, and I don't have the data to do that. But if the carriers can provide some feedback, we're certainly interested in that. There was a concern in the comments about the cost of these plans. So it's not that we're avoiding it. It's wanted to put the structure together, and that's kind of what I'm hoping in the comments for this next round. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that now, or that will be discussed in the next meeting.
I
Hey,
can't
Marty?
speak to. Sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
No, Tyler, go ahead, finish.
I can't speak yet to the price, just because we haven't run the new plans through. On the AV part, though, a similar question to the mental health parity is: have you thought about providing the Bureau providing the AVs for all carriers? I think from what I've heard, that's done in other states where the Bureau kind of provides that AV, and the carriers just use that to certify that they're in that de minimis range, rather than, again, there's some flexibility I think that each carrier has in terms of how they compute an AV or things like that. So that would sort of standardize that across the carriers, and we would know then at that point that at least the plan designs you proposed are in that AV range, because we've got a couple I think that we've run based on what you've sent out that were a little bit outside of that. I think 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That was something else, that I wanted to touch on that was in the comments. So our intent was obviously for the plans to be, to meet the AV. I ran some quick calculations, and I can certainly share how I ran the calculations. I noticed Washington State, I did a little bit of research reading their documents, and their approach was to provide some cushion. In other words, not be right on the extreme edge of an AV. So anticipating, like when the 2022 calculator comes up, that, hopefully providing that cushion there would allow the plans to still meet it. My preference is that the carriers run their own for the filings and certify them, because I don't feel, well, that's my preference, would be for the carriers. And, during this process, I guess I would encourage any carriers, if you've run an AV on a plan and you feel like it's out of compliance, share that with me, and you can do that, as part of your formal comments, or if we want to set up a time to talk about it. I'm certainly open to suggestions on those calculations, because I've worked to get those within the AV requirements as much as possible. And once again, like I said, we still have to meet federal requirements. So yes, these standardized plans do have to meet the AV, and we will have to make sure they still fit within it.
Marty, it's Peter Gore. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm the one that brought up costs in my comments. I don't know if others did, but I know we did, because that's what we hear about most.
Sure.
The cost and the availability and the affordability of coverage from employers for their employees. So my question to you is, you're asking carriers to run pricing on this now, but you're also indicating, you're talking about filings with these plans. What happens if these plans come back and they're more expensive than what's available today? What are the alternatives here? Is there a plan B? Because honestly, I'm very concerned about it.
Yeah, and we certainly are concerned about the pricing. But the other aspect of it is, we hear from consumers a lot that say, I am paying premium and I'm getting nothing for this coverage. Now, we know better. I mean, they have coverage, obviously, in case of a catastrophic event, that type of thing. Their thinking is, more of a healthcare type of coverage. So we're trying to balance providing them something of value that they see. And it is of value. We're providing some first dollar visits, some prescription drugs, and there may be a little bit of increase in, so that ends up making the plans cost more. But in the long run, they're getting a benefit versus, the increase to the premium. So as we mentioned, some of it is perception. These plans are not put together to be bare bones, lowest cost premium possible. Their purpose is to provide something of value. And as I mentioned, there's the alternative plans. If a carrier feels that in order to meet customer needs, they'll provide, a bronze that ends up being almost a zero cost to a subsidized member, or catastrophic, then that ability is still there. So I'm not asking necessarily the carriers to price these plans as they would for a rate filing type of thing, but they, if they could provide some feedback on are these still within a price point of a consumer being able to afford them? And that's why we're hoping to provide, a range of options. I mean, there's a deductible plan there. I don't know if I can pull it up here to look at it. But, it looked to me as though there's a bronze high deductible plan that's at the highest level deductible that you can get. So I guess I don't understand, why there aren't a variety of options with this cost structure. So that's kind of my response.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I would add is, I've been hearing about the issue of value for a long time in my career, and I'm going to say the same thing today that I've said in the past. The value of a plan is meaningless if the employee and the employer can't afford it. It's that simple.
Hey, Marty, it's Bill Whitmore.
Yep, hi, Bill.
Hey, I think I'm going to go a little bit higher level than some of the early discussion. Just a few comments, maybe a question. So we've got the defined options, and I'm curious as to why, if the plans are all going to be the same, why limit the number of different options within a plan based on deductible, maximum out-of-pocket copays, things like that? Maybe introducing more options with more cost sharing. I don't see that as introducing more complexity. If it's the exact same plan and the only difference is the cost sharing, potentially it could introduce some more pricing flexibility. I mean, I know through reading the comments that I think the dominant comment that I saw and was just echoed by Peter is there's a lot of concern about cost, obviously, and we've had this discussion before. It's this balance. I was going to say battle, but it's maybe both between simplicity and cost. And I know there are advocates in support of simplicity. I think everybody would like these plans to be simple, but at their core, they're not going to be simple. It's health insurance. So I encourage potentially more options. The plans don't have to change, just the number of options based on deductibles and things like that. So that's one question, comment. I'm still curious as to what happens if the markets do not merge. To me, that still seems like a distinct possibility that these two markets will not merge. Are we going to force the same benefit designs on two very distinct markets if they don't merge? That may have been in the comments, but I'm not sure they understood it. And then you just referenced again the three alternate plans. If I read the comments, or I guess the response document correctly, it suggested that tiered plans could be offered as alternate plans. And I see in the market right now, and it's not just my company, probably the most popular options in the market right now are tiered options. And so it seems like the three alternate plans would probably get chewed up pretty quickly with tiered plans, thus leaving really very little other opportunity to be creative and innovative and offer things in the market. That was a lot.
Thanks,
sorry.
Yeah, that was a lot. Maybe we can work backwards, and then if I forget something, you can remind me. The tiered plans, I'm wondering why, when you mentioned they're popular, to be, without looking at it, I'm off the top of my head, are they lower in premium? Are you able to, through your tiering, to offer a lower premium product?
They tend to be, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I know, we're all aware that, consumers make decisions not necessarily based on the best coverage for their needs. Some, or many, we could say, do make a purely cost decision, and purchase the lowest premium. And, so there's complex decisions that get made there. And then, okay, so the question about markets, if the markets don't merge, I don't know if one of the attorneys wants to jump in on this one, because certainly we are working within the statute on that. I'm just looking back to, was it comment 2 and 3 that mentioned, and I think, Bob, we had this discussion too at one point, what the statute says.
Well, if the
plans.
If the markets don't merge, Clear Choice still goes forward, but I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how the nuances play out. So let me look it up.
Yeah, and we can send out an answer too. I mean, it's complex because, yeah, we're both thinking of merge market as well as not. We have to keep that consideration open until that decision gets made, for sure. So, okay, yep, we'll try to make that clear. Bill, I appreciate that confusion. Hard to keep it all of the different possibilities. And then the cost, you bring up yeah, some interesting points on that. And I don't know if anyone can speak to, I know it's a big question, but where are the cost items? Where are the things that drive the cost of these plans that we should be extra sensitive to? We run the AV on it, and we understand that the AV is not the cost. So we try to fit these plans into the AV value, try to make it work. We try to, have some value benefits outside deductible. But yeah, I understand the piece that we're kind of missing is, are we throwing some very expensive benefits out there that maybe we could tighten up some in this cost structure? I don't know if anyone has anything off the top of their head that they want to bring up that we should be cautious of. High cost price item, and that could certainly be in the comments as well. And maybe that's not something that's easily answered.
And it's as much, Marty, about just a range of options, and again, more options to a degree creates complexity. But if it's simply the deductible or the copay that's changing with those options and nothing else, I'd like to think it doesn't add a tremendous amount of additional complexity. And also, Martin, just going to add, and everybody is thinking this, we know this is a law that was passed, and you guys are doing your best to work with something that's very challenging, and we do appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because that's pretty much what we've got. We're working with a requirement, and I think we're all working towards the same goal of creating these plans with the least disruption and acknowledge carrier differences and consumer demands. So yeah, it's a fine balance. And my thoughts, I'd written some different ideas down, in thinking about it. And like I said, I'd look to Washington because they're kind of on the same course, a little bit ahead of us. We're creating a starting point, and once we understand the impacts, we can make adjustments. We're trying to do good and not create damage, but we recognize that we probably won't get it perfect the first time. So I think everyone can recognize that this is an ongoing process. But yeah, the goal is, we want to maximize the federal premium subsidy, simplify enrollment choice, have some copay prior to deductible, and keep the premium reasonable. They're pretty big goals, but we're getting there, and I appreciate everyone's input. As we discuss these things, it's helpful. And the written comments kind of memorialize it, so we can look back to those and continue to tweak. So that, I think, was all that I had, specifically to go through. I'm just looking back at my notes to see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on. I can certainly open it up if anyone has not had a chance to speak up and, they've got something on their mind. We certainly have time to discuss that. And I think Bob's still looking for the answer to the question, but no rush, because I can send that out.
So
Yeah,
looks
I
like
mean-
Chris has her hand up.
Oh, thanks. I can't see the hands up. Go
I
ahead,
was going to
Chris.
something anyway.
I figured.
But this may be a question for Bob and some of the other lawyers. Marty, you mentioned that, understanding that as we move forward, we may need to make adjustments because, we don't have the AV calculator and things may not land in the right place. But one question I have is, this is going to be established in rule. So how will the flexibility be afforded if the plan designs are set in rule? And I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to think it through, like how we the collective we make adjustments to those plan designs if we've adopted the rule and, then we find out that based on the 2022 AV calculator, we're not hitting the right AVs. So that's one question. And the other is back to Bill's comments, I think, about the merged market. Sort of how do you see the timeline for development of the clear choice, and development of or moving forward with a determination on merged market? Obviously, they're very intertwined from our perspective and from everyone's perspective. So we're trying to work through, how that timing's going to work.
Yeah, no, those are good, good discussion issues. So yeah, I might defer somewhat to the attorneys, and that's something that perhaps we can. Go ahead, Bob.
I think your comment on making adjustments to comply with AV requirements is a good comment as we set about drafting the rule, because what we would have in the way of flexibility as far as compliance with the rule goes depends on what contingencies we're able to account for within the rule.
Yeah, and that was my thought, was that when we word the rule, it has to acknowledge that there'll be an AV calculator perhaps coming out after we finalize it, and suggest that there would be certain adjustments made once the calculator comes out. Right, Bob? Is that?
Yeah, I mean,
we'd have to.
This is something we can think about both during the rule drafting process and in your comments at the hearing. So it's a good issue to have out there on the table.
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't necessarily expecting you to answer it today definitively, but it's something I've been thinking about, like how do we, the global we make those adjustments. So thanks.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll be minor, obviously, just to the extent to meet the requirements. And then the other point, Chris, I'm glad you brought up, was with merge market. So we do have some internal timeframes that are going on. So Wakely is reviewing Gorman and Milliman analysis, and we're hoping to get something from them by the end of November. And we have a letter of intent filed with CMS. We've been discussing with CMS. I think they just provided us guidance that indicated perhaps a response within 30 days of our submission that I believe was October 2nd. So hopefully we'll be getting information on that. That's kind of my piece of it. I don't know if any other staff wanted to make any comments about the merged market. But yeah, we recognize that is critical and certainly should be available. We have to review and finalize the standardized plans. So we will provide and continue to give you information as quickly as we can on that.
Thanks.
Anybody else? And speak up rather than raise your hand if needed, because I can't see them. Anyone BOI have any more comments? questions, issues?
I don't, Marty, but this has been a very productive meeting, and well, and thank you for your all your work on this. But I want to thank interested parties for providing meaningful comments, because we want to get this right. We think there's great benefit for reducing complexity, but we strike the balance. We know there's a balance we need to strike. So this is incredibly helpful, and we look forward to the comments on November 20th, and then we'll initiate rulemaking. But again, I encourage the parties to stay engaged and provide the constructive feedback, because we'll, at the end of the day, end up with a better result, I think.
So Eric, this is Chris. At the outset, you said that you weren't 100% sure you were going to have another meeting. Are you leaning towards having such a meeting to sort of follow up on the comments that have to be submitted by the 6th?
Yes, I am. I think today's meeting, we need that November meeting. So that's what.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and we'll try to get that final date out as soon as we can. But like I said, I think we were tossing around November 20th seemed to be the right stretch of time and available. So hopefully that works. So unless there's any other comments, I think we're good. I'll take back, I appreciate the questions and comments, and we'll try to get some answers and some information on that as soon as we can. But also, if everyone can kind of work on their responses in writing, preferably by November 6th, so that we can prepare for the next meeting. All righty. Thank you, everybody. We'll be talking soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.